and that's kind of a big letdown when they do that. So that's really, really odd to have to go live in a house like that. So did y'all live there very long?
Yeah, we lived there 7 years, about 6 or 7 years. Yeah.
Dang, that is a long time living with a ghost.
And other people tell us it was haunted. We'd have yard sales, and they'd say they weren't coming in the yard. Because they heard it was haunted.
Well, you should have had it around Halloween. You called it haunted yard sale. So that would have. Just a joke. Sorry.
This house that he's speaking about, Stan, one afternoon, my mother and father came over, and we were going to go out to dinner. And I had just gotten a piano, and I had it in the front part of the house, which was the oldest part of the house. And I had this long table, kitchen or dining table, that was, sort of in front of the piano, but there was enough room to sit down and play the piano. And right behind the piano bench where you would sit was a high-backed cane chair at the end of the dining table. Well, while we were getting dressed, my mother plays the piano because my background is I'm a preacher's daughter, been one since the age of 11. So my mother's played piano in church, the entire time that my father was a minister. So she was in there playing Amazing Grace on the piano. So I come out, and I'm standing there in the kitchen, now quite a bit of ways, probably 30 to 60 feet away from my mother, where she was sitting and playing the piano, and my son comes to the same place and stands right there by me, and I tell my mom, I say, Mom, come on, stop playing the piano. We're ready to leave. We're fixing to go eat now. So she says, okay, and she continues to play. She's finishing up the song. Well, my son and I are standing there just watching her, listening to her, and we watched this physically with our own eyes. My son and I watched the chair that was at the back of my mother's back, right there at the piano bench, slide out. The thing, when it slid out, it just leaned backwards, like you're sitting in a chair and how you'll just lean backwards with the two back legs of the chair off on the ground and the two front ones off the ground, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And this thing slams into her back and then automatically sets back down. And I look at my son, and my son looks at me, and my mother stops playing, of course, because she's just got hit in the back with that chair. And she turns around and looks at me and my son. She says, ow. She says, why did y'all do that? I said, Mom, we didn't do that. I said, turn around and look where we're at. And she turned around and looked and saw that my son and I were standing in the doorway of the kitchen looking at her. And she says, who did that? I said, well, that chair just hit you in the back by itself, Mom. And I said, I think you better get out of there. And so she closed that piano down real fast, and she got up and got out of there.
Wow.
But we had all kinds of experiences like that happen in that house while we were there. Some of the most amazing evidence I've ever come across, up to the point where we went to Hotel de Puniac here a few months back. But I hate to say it, but I miss that house. I really do. I wish I could go back there and live there now.
That's interesting.
It is, very. I wish you could have seen it.
That's cool.
And my mom's not a believer. My mom's not a believer. She didn't believe in things of that nature, and she still doesn't to a degree, but since that happened to her, and then some of the things that the group and I have shared with Mom, she's coming around, but she still has her doubts. But that did happen. God is my witness. It happened.
Well, we all sometime or another experience things, and even people that are not believers, they experience things and just pass it off.
Yeah.
And it very, very well could have been paranormal in nature. They're just not tuned into that. And because reality sometimes sets in and things occur. And when that reality sets in and they finally see something that they just positively cannot explain and cannot just dismiss, at that point, they start getting a little hunger build up. And one of my good friends was the same way. He didn't believe in anything. In fact, he didn't believe in God, he said. And thank God, about 3 years ago, he accepted Christ. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, me and some other friends of his was working on him, just a simple word of encouragement. But he had actually had a chair to slide across the floor, and there was nobody in it. And he called me, and I'm gonna tell you exactly what he said. Now, mind you, I'm not in his house. I'm in my house. He calls me, and the first thing he said was, "What in the hell is going on in my house?" And
wow.
I'm like, dude, what is up? And then he just babbling on, this slid across the floor, and I'm like, man, what in the world has done happened to him? So I ended up going over to his house, and he is as white as a sheet, and he's sitting there, he's just looking at the chair because the chair stopped right in the middle of the room, and he says, he says, "Do you think my house tilted?" And it's, dude, why would your house tilt? And he was trying to explain it away in every possible way he could. And, of course, he looked at me, he said, "This stuff is real." And I said, "Yes, it's real, man." I said, you don't let it frighten you, don't let it control you, but it is real. And but he ended up moving. And the last time I heard from him, he'd not had any type of experience like that, but he was in church, and he was doing really well, and I thank God for that. And maybe God was showing him, hey, this is what you're in for if you don't do something, and I think there's lessons. Go ahead.
Stan, one of the things that you were talking about earlier is, and one of the things I just thought about is we're all powerful. We're very powerful. You were talking about using our own senses and using our own intuitions to do investigations. That's one of the things when we talk about noisy ghost or what people call poltergeist activity. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, one of the first things that our team does is we'll look around. I mean, we're not trying to zero in on anybody, but we might look around to see if maybe there's a prepubescent teen female in the house or a woman maybe that's close to menopausal age or, we start looking at those things because we're very, kinetically attached. And I think that we're very powerful. I think we're powerful enough that we can make things happen. I'm a real strong believer in telekinesis.
Right. I agree.
And that we can make those kind of things happen. Mm-hmm. Chairs move, plates rattle.
Emotions. Emotions are very strong, and that's what I was talking to you about earlier when we first started the show about how we as empaths, some are stronger than others. It just depends on how strong our emotions are. I mean, we leave a mark, maybe mark is not, I don't know, but we our emotions leave a aura about us and in the atmosphere, and that a lot of times, like whenever we do go out in public, that's what we pick up on is people's emotions that are just at like
peak.
Yeah, at a peak. I mean, you can just feel it walking past them, Have you ever been in a store and had that happen to you, Stan? You just go by somebody and all of a sudden you
just feel really sad.
Yeah.
Or you feel
like you
anxious.
Or anxious or you want to cry or something because you just passed by that person and you've picked up on everything that they've been feeling.
Yes, I can honestly say I have.
It's strange. You ever seen the movie with Mel Gibson? What's it called? That one that we like so much, Signs, where they put the tin foil on their heads to block out the aliens. That's how I feel sometimes. If I could wrap some tin foil around my head and block all the cosmic funk, as I called it earlier, out, I would do it. I'd walk around with a tin foil hat on my head all the time.
Nowadays, you'd fit right in. That's for sure.
Probably. Probably.
Yes, I've experienced in the public things like that. My most recent thing was when we were investigating in Cahaba. I was in an area by myself, and I got the most dreaded feeling, and then the emotion poured over me like, I mean, you would just not believe. And we honestly believe that there was a soldier that died in that location. And so
yep.
I try not to project myself out as being able to do things like you guys do, or honestly, I try to close myself up, and it's just an old safety mechanism. But sometimes it comes through, and my hat's off to you guys that experience that every day and can't really, like you said earlier, you can't really shut it off, and you got that cosmic funk, as you call it, kind of settling in on you all the time. I might, if I had to do that, I probably would become a recluse. And it's kind of like having the sorrows of the world on your shoulders. And
it is. Most of the time, I know from my personal experience, I can't speak for the rest of them on the team, but I imagine that they do feel some of this like I do most of the time. But I walk around and I feel like I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders, and a lot of times it may not even be from anything that's in my life. It's just the cosmic things that I'm picking up on, from people. And sometimes even whenever I've not been anywhere out in public in a day's time, it can be stuff that I'm picking up from in the atmosphere. It's crazy. I mean, I tell people whenever they start talking to me about the gifts of empathy and feelings and the things that we have, sometimes it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because you know certain things. Most of the time I know them before they're going to happen. I do call my family and close friends and say, hey, if you're thinking about doing this today, don't go there. Go another route if you're going to go. Or, I make them or try to persuade them to change their plans because I feel like something's going to happen. And 9 times out of 10, they'll call me later and say, Mom, you were right. Such and such happened. It's carrying that load that you pick up from the atmosphere and from other people around with you all the time. It causes so much stress in your life. I know it does me. It causes me to be depressed a lot. I have to really fight it. I really do. I have to find ways to be creative, like painting or drawing or doing something that I love to really kind of just shut down my brain from that portion of my life to be able to have any peace of mind, if you know what I'm talking about.
Sure, I do. Absolutely.
Because if I don't, I feel like I'm going to go nuts. I really do.
I bet. Even paranormal investigating, whenever you get an attachment, and I wanted to, before we get out of here, I wanted to ask you about another incident you told me on the phone, but I wanted to read something. Miss Donna, the lady that asked the question earlier, she kind of gave me a little story here that I wanted to read. She said, I grew up in an old historic house in Wilmington, North Carolina, which, by the way, that's where I'm from. And it was definitely haunted, she said. There were